Today we're analyzing the movie The Butterfly Effect.
By Karen,
Sherry,
and Lian.
It has been said something as small as the flutter of a butterfly's wing can ultimately cause a typhoon halfway around the world. So I'm going to try to make this summary as short as possible, but we'll see. So right at the beginning of the movie, we see Evan hiding in a mental institution writing a letter, and then the entire movie plays out as a major flashback. So it's important to understand that the movie is composed of 1. Reality, 2. Blackouts, and 3. Going back to the blackouts to change the future. It's confusing. I'll try to explain it better.
whoops.
Let's start at the beginning of the flashback when Evan was still a kid. So, one day the teacher asked the students to draw a picture of what they wanted to be when they grew up, and Evan drew a picture of himself as a killer, but had no recollection of doing so. After his mother finds out, she gets worried and takes him to Sunnyvale Institution to check whether Evan has a mental disease. The doctor suggests journal writing to trigger the lost memory. The next day, Evan is eating breakfast in the kitchen at one point and then suddenly takes out a knife, but doesn't know why he took it out when asked. His mother takes him to Kaylee's house to play Robin Hood, and while everything seems fun in the beginning, Kaylee's dad decides to make a child porno and tells Evan and Kaylee to take off their clothes. But Evan doesn't remember what really happened. The scene jumps to the doctor analyzing Evan's brain scan and suggesting that Evan's mom let Evan meet his dad. At the mental institution where his dad is staying, the conversation progresses civilly, but then Evan blacks out and wakes up to his dad choking Evan with his cuffs, and the guards conk him out on the head and he dies. His dad does. 6 years later, Tommy dares Lenny to put dynamite in a young mother's mailbox while Evan and Kaylee watch. The dynamite explodes, killing the mother and her toddler, and Lenny has a heart attack, but Evan doesn't remember what happened after the explosion. Jumping ahead, in a junkyard, Tommy kills Evan's dog and knocks Kaylee out, but Evan doesn't really remember what happens. Evan ends up moving away to get away from all the trauma and becomes a good student in college. One night after a date, he realizes he can go back to his blackouts. He goes back to find Lenny and Kaylee to find out the truth, and that's when he starts changing the past to change the future.
Now we're going to go into the analysis. This film's unique structure is characteristic of a trauma narrative that follows Evan's life from age 6 to adulthood. A long flashback of Evan's life following the clip of Evan escaping the guards in the mental institution is told in chronological order, disrupted only by several mental blackouts that Evan experienced during traumatic periods, such as being forced to participate in a child pornography film, witnessing his friend's dynamite kill his mother and her infant, and so on. These blackouts serve as Evan's innate biological defenses that protect him from suffering permanent psychological wounds, and thus he is the only one of the 4 children that grew up mentally well. To try to trigger suppressed memories from these blackouts, a doctor from Sunnyvale Institution suggested Evan to start writing a journal to record his daily life. As an adult, Evan can travel back to the blackouts by reading specific journal entries that were written prior to the traumatic incidents. By choosing to say or do something different during these visits to the past, Evan can enter an alternate future and stay there until he visits another blackout and change his past actions. Once he found out about this ability to change his and his closest friends' and family's futures, he went back several times to try to heal Kaylee's, Lenny's, and Tommy's psychological wounds. However, no matter which blackout he travels to and which actions he implements, he cannot resolve the effects of the past trauma, and at least one person still suffers. For example, Lenny ends up strapped on a table in a mental institution. Furthermore, the more times he travels back and re-experiences the trauma, the more mentally unstable and physically worn out he becomes. He suffers nosebleeds that get progressively worse due to the fact that he accumulates new memories to fit his alternate futures. Eventually, he makes a change that kills Kaylee and makes him wind up in the Sunnyvale mental institution.
Second, we're going to discuss how the film conforms to stereotypes and social taboos concerning gender roles and suicide. With gender roles, there are 3 inherent assumptions that the movie bases itself upon. 1, only males have the power to affect others' lives. 2, males are heroes. 3, females are prizes. So first, only males have the power to affect others' lives because only males can inherit the disease that allows them to time travel, while females are simply dependents who accept the consequences. For example, in Alternative Future 2, as a result of Evan's actions, Tommy is accidentally killed, and Kaylee grows up at the hands of an abusive father, ultimately becoming a prostitute. When Evan visits Kaylee and tries to explain to her how he can fix things to make her life better, she rages at him instead for being all high and mighty and trying to be a hero but ruining her life.
You have to change everyone else's life again, is that it? Maybe next time you'll pop up in some mansion while I end up in Tijuana doing some donkey act.
You know what? I'm over it. Every time I try to help someone, everything just goes to shit.
Well, don't give up now, Slick. Hell, you've already done so much for me.
As a result, the female protagonist is looked upon as a dependent who has little control over the direction of her own life and has no choice but to accept the consequences of the male protagonist's actions. By empowering the male protagonist, this in itself implies a second assumption, that there must be a hero figure to protect the woman. Evan's main goal through most of the movie is to better Kaylee's life, while the outcome of Lenny's and Tommy's lives are secondary. Furthermore, not only must Kaylee be happy, Evan must also be happy dating her. This leads to the third assumption, that females are the prize, that Evan must get the girl. For example, Alternative Future 4 is one of the rare alternatives where everyone seems to be happy. However, there's one major flaw. Kaylee is dating Lenny.
Be right back, okay?
Evan is ultimately unhappy and tries to commit suicide. When it is later revealed that his mother has lung cancer, it seems too much like a convenient plot device that gives Evan an excuse to go back in time and change things again.
I think I can fix it.
Thus, even the alternative future where most people are happy is not acceptable unless Evan ends up with the ultimate prize, the female love interest, Kaylee. All in all, in this movie, female protagonists are placed in a position secondary to the male protagonists. The film also conforms to the social taboo of suicide. In the original director's cut, Evan goes back to the moment of his birth and commits suicide in the womb by suffocating himself with an umbilical cord. Because Evan erases his existence, Kaylee has no reason to remain with her abusive father, so she moves in with her mother instead and grows up a lot happier. Meanwhile, Evan's parents raise a daughter who does not inherit the time-traveling genes, while Lenny has a normal childhood with other friends. This nihilistic finale adds another layer to the movie, making you think about your actions in life and consequences they have on those around us. It's a disturbing reminder that the things we say and do, and even our very existence, may completely change others' lives. However, the studio demanded a happier ending that the directors didn't like. The theatrical cut has a very Hollywood ending where everyone lives happily ever after. By replacing the director's cut with a happier theatrical cut, suicide is treated as a stigma that is removed from the audience's awareness. Suicide is generally viewed as a crime or a sign of cowardice to the Western audiences, and is treated with censorship and avoidance. However, it is in fact a fatal symptom of mental or emotional disorders that should be treated with more open discussion and social support. Thus, the use of a happier theatrical cut in place of the tragic director's cut is a comment on the tastes of the general public and the continuation of suicide as a taboo in society.
So next we're going to talk about the theme of fate versus free will in the butterfly effect, and how it connects to the same theme in Things Fall Apart. However, whereas there is a more equal apportionment between fate and free will in Things Fall Apart, fate plays a larger role in the play of events than free will does in the butterfly effect. So basically, in Things Fall Apart, the Oracle warns Okonkwo not to play a part in Aiki Mifune's death, stating that it would not please the Earth Goddess. However, Okonkwo did so anyway, exerting his free will. The role of fate can be portrayed by the quote, Unoka was an ill-fated man. He had a bad chi or personal god, and evil fortune followed him to the grave, or rather to his death, for he had no grave. This quote shows how Unoka's bad chi rather than his own actions controlled his life. So moving on to the butterfly effect. Although Evan seems to be able to exhibit free will when he goes back to change the past, he's unable to find an ideal future for everyone because either he's unhappy, Kaylee is dead, or Kaylee is a prostitute, etc. This suggests that fate is still controlling the overall end result of everyone's lives. Throughout the movie, Evan thinks that the ideal future is one in which he and Kaylee are happy together, so he tries to change the past with that future in mind. Nevertheless, due to factors beyond his control, the only happy alternative futures are the ones in which Evan and Kaylee are not together. For example, in Alternative Future 4, Kaylee and Lenny are an item and happy together, but Evan is a miserable amputee, so Evan uses the excuse of relieving his mother of lung cancer to attempt to change the past in his favor once again. Another example is in the theatrical cut of the movie, where Evan whispers, "I hate you, and if you ever come near me again, I'll kill you and your whole damn family." And Evan never becomes friends with Kaylee. And Kaylee chooses to live with her mom after her parents' divorce. In this version of the future, Kaylee is not traumatized by her father's perverseness, and Tommy, Lenny, and her all grow up fine. Finally, in the director's cut, Evan suffocates himself with his umbilical cord, which doesn't scientifically make sense, but he does so anyway because fetal Evan supposedly has future Evan's awareness. Anyway, because Evan was never born, Kaylee and Tommy choose to live with their mom after the divorce and grow up happily. All these examples emphasize that fate does not have happy things in store for Kaylee and Evan as an item. If Evan and Kaylee become friends, Kaylee will choose to live with her perverse father rather than her mother because she wants to stay close to Evan. And then Mr. Miller's perverse ways will affect Kaylee and or Tommy, and Evan and Kaylee cannot be together.
Thank you for watching us analyze The Butterfly Effect by Karen,
Sherry?
And Lian.